and welcome to Albuquerque Housing Authority Update. I'm Brian Egan, your host, attorney for Albuquerque Housing Authority. Today we have as our special guests Dan and Matthew. Welcome.
Thanks, Brian.
So Dan, tell us, what do you do for the Housing Authority?
I'm in charge of their capital improvements. My title is the Capital Fund Program Manager. The Capital Fund is a pot of money we get from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development as a public housing agency every year. It's a formula-based grant based primarily on how many public housing units we have. And we currently have 953 public housing units scattered across 26 multifamily sites, and then we have 10 sort of standalone public housing homes.
And they're in all four quadrants of the city?
Yep, pretty well spread out throughout the city.
And roughly when were they developed?
The earliest was probably 72, and the newest is about 84.
So these are older properties at this point?
They are older properties. They've been pretty well maintained, but they are aging, and they haven't had any major renovations since they were originally built.
And Matthew, what do you do for us at the Albuquerque
I am
Housing
actually
Authority?
the Public Housing Program Manager, so my responsibility lies with all of public housing. I oversee maintenance as well as the public housing specialists, which are basically the property managers for public housing.
So you're more on the operations side about deciding which tenants are moving in and moving out and the rents. And Dan, you're more about deciding what buildings should be built or rebuilt and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and what major capital improvements need to take priority. Annually we get about $1.1 to $1.2 million from HUD. That's not enough to do all the things that we would like to do. So a big part of my job is trying to set priorities. What are the most urgent maintenance needs?
And is there a plan for how we allocate that $1 million over the about 1,000 apartments?
There is. There's sort of a couple of overlapping plans. We do what's called a 5-year plan, and that tries to look at what we think are going to be our capital needs improvements priorities over the next 5 years. And then we do an annual plan. And that annual plan is the document that we submit to the Housing and Urban Development for approval. It's basically our grant budget.
And the third one he did mention was the MAP plan, and that's if we have a leaky roof, I'm knocking on Dan's door to get money to get that roof fixed. We do have emergencies occasionally that occur, things that we have to jump on and replace right away. Roofs, water heaters, heaters, things that we need capital money for. So there is a mechanism so that if we have an emergency, we can get that accomplished. And that's where I'm hollering at Dan or knocking on his door saying, Dan, we need your help.
And some of it's, there's a division between what's done as sort of our routine maintenance, and we do that out of a maintenance budget that we have every year. That's typically the smaller items that, it might be a roof repair where we have to hire a contractor, or we have our own maintenance staff go out and patch some roofs.
Right.
And then the next stage, if we look at it and we determine that it's beyond patching, then it becomes a roof replacement.
Right.
And that's where that's when it becomes a capital improvement project, and it falls back into my lap to deal with.
Capital improvements last for many years, and they add value to the asset. And maintenance is just keeping it going.
Just on a daily basis,
like
correct.
a tenant moves out, and we need to clean the apartment and repaint the kitchen or something.
Correct, correct.
Now, you mentioned the capital plan, our 5-year plan and annual plan. Is that something the public can offer input on?
Yeah, when we do annual revisions, and that's usually early in the spring, we will announce it and make a legal announcement. We announce it on our website, on our Facebook page, and we will invite public comment. We'll put out a draft, and then we'll invite the public to come in and comment. This year, I think we had about a half dozen open public meetings where we were inviting public input on it.
And written comments are welcome as well as verbal comments?
Absolutely.
And people can offer their ideas any time of the year, but the most impact is when we're actually writing the plan.
Yeah, that's the time to strike. That's when the iron is hot.
And speaking of striking while the iron is hot, has the Housing Authority been awarded additional funds for a new program?
We have. It's pretty exciting.
Which program is that?
The big program is called the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program. This is a program created in 1986 by Ronald Reagan. It's now become the predominant funding mechanism for the development or rehabilitation of affordable housing. A lot of the direct sources of funding, the type of funding that originally built our housing units is no longer available. So there's this new mechanism.
And is that why we haven't built any public housing since the 80s? Because the HUD hasn't funded any new public housing since the 80s.
Yeah, that's about when it stopped across the country.
Yeah, there's some other funding mechanisms, but they're very small. An example, the last time, about 5 years ago, HUD put out some money for what they call 811s and 202s, which are senior and disabled, and those maybe covered one development of 50 units in the state of New Mexico.
Wow.
So the last time that was done, that's all it covered, and now it's just the low-income tax credit program is really the only affordable housing program remaining in the United States that's used widely.
And so has the Albuquerque Housing Authority applied for an award of low-income housing tax credits?
We applied this year and we received an award, which we're pretty proud of. It's a very competitive process. Typically only 1 out of every 4 applications gets funded. So the state, it's the New Mexico Mortgage Finance Authority, is what's called the Housing Credit Agency for New Mexico. And they allocate out approximately $48 million worth of tax credits every year. And that's usually enough to get 5 or 6 acquisition, rehabilitation, or new construction projects completed around the state in a given year. So this year we went in with the Wishrock Development Group, terrific partners. They're a for-profit affordable housing developer. They have a long track record. They've developed or rehabilitated over 10,000 units of housing already. So it's a great way for the housing authority to transition back into doing development and rehabilitation. Helps us build capacity by partnering with a very strong agency.
Because they're a national company.
Yeah, they're national. They have, the office we're working primarily with is they're based out of Missoula, but they have Missoula, Montana. They have 3 different offices. Well, the one in Missoula, Montana, a home office in Portland, Maine, and then another branch office in Jackson, Mississippi.
So they're helping us do what here in Albuquerque?
They're helping us acquire and rehabilitate the Rio Vista apartments. And that's a existing 75-unit senior housing property located at 770 Juan Tabo Northeast. So that's on Juan Tabo, just south of Lomas.
And the one important thing about this is the preservation of subsidy. Right now it is a project-based property, which means it's the subsidy is there for seniors and disabled. And in years past, other developers have come in, put tax credits on properties and eliminated the subsidy. We're preserving that subsidy, which is really important, I believe, to the senior and the disabled here in this town, as well as to the city of Albuquerque, because now we maintain 75 apartments with subsidy on them so that the rent is 30% of their adjusted income.
And the subsidy you're talking about is a project-based rental assistance contract, a PRAC contract with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development?
Right, that is through HUD. The subsidy is through HUD. It's a separate contract. It's different than public housing, but the rules remain the same for qualifying. So the income and everything is the same. It'll be no change to the tenants. The only thing they'll notice is that they're getting an upgraded place to live, upgraded appliances and everything.
And so tell us about the upgrades that are planned for Rio Vista apartments at no expense to the tenants.
It's an extensive renovation. Basically, from the tenant's perspective, they're going to get a new unit. The layouts of the units are going to be the same. They're not going to change. We're not having to move walls, except for some of the units. We are doing 8 units that are going to be fully handicap accessible. So those ones will require some moving walls. Other than that, no walls are moving.
They're all one-bedroom apartments,
They
right?
are all one-bedroom apartments, but there'll be new cabinetry, new countertops, all new appliances. The walls will all be repainted. All the lighting fixtures get replaced. All the plumbing fixtures are getting replaced. Carpeting's getting removed, replaced with hard surface flooring.
So it'll be energy efficient, water efficient, and
Yeah, we're building to what's called the Enterprise Green Communities Standard, and that's kind of a holistic package. It involves a lot of energy efficiency improvements, water conservation improvements, as well as healthy living environments. So it's going to be a non-smoking property, except there'll be one spot designated on the site, a minimum of 25 feet away from the building where residents can smoke. Otherwise, it's going to be a non-smoking building.
smoke-free housing.
Smoke-free housing, correct. And all the paints and the glues, the finishes that we'll be using will all be low in volatile organic compounds, low VOC, so there won't be, that awful smell that you get if you repaint using a standard paint product.
Healthy indoor air standards.
Exactly. And a big part of it, of what we're doing is going to be replacing the main boiler systems. So central cooling and heating are going to be all upgraded. There's going to be new roofs, added insulation, better air sealing. So it should just be a much more comfortable environment for the tenants.
It'll be cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter. The temperature won't swing as much, which is very important when you're elderly, and temperature swings can be very painful if you have arthritis. Yeah,
so it should be very comfortable. I mean, we were out there for a tenant meeting last week, and it was great meetings. We had 2 meetings, and 67 of the 75 residents turned out to those meetings.
Wow.
So very engaged community, great community, and they were really excited about this this change. But we were in the community room of the building right now, and you can tell that the air conditioning needs upgrading.
Because when was the building built?
The building was built in 79 or 80, 1979, 1980.
And the other thing that's, I think, important to bring up is the fact that there's going to be accessible units there. Because the building was built in 79, 80, there was different building standards back then. Now the standards are that you have to have 100% accessibility. So someone in a wheelchair can actually get in and maneuver through the apartments. A lot of one-bedroom apartments make it really difficult to maneuver with the wheelchair. And since there is, this is senior disabled, there's a lot of seniors that in their later years they get into a wheelchair. So the fact that we're doing those, that in itself is a really high cost on an older property because they weren't built in that manner. So that's where you may have to move a few walls to get the accessibility. But it's always nice to get more accessibility in properties so that you can, you have more people that can take advantage of the services.
For example, the bathroom may need to be remodeled so that someone with a mobility impairment in a wheelchair can get into the bathroom,
Absolutely.
Close the door, move around.
And still have the 10-foot radius that they need to get around in their chair and things like that.
Have a roll-in shower instead of a
Yes.
bathtub.
Exactly.
Yeah, and in addition to those units being remodeled, there's a lot of other tenants, this being a property that targets seniors and people with disability. There's a lot of other issues that tenants need to have addressed. And so we're going to be doing other accommodations beyond that. So there are a number of tenants that have a hearing impairment or a vision impairment. So there'll be specific modifications made to units to meet their needs.
For example, the smoke detector may flash if the tenant's hearing impaired and they can't hear the alarm going off.
Not only that, the bed will vibrate.
Wow, cool. Bed shaker.
Exactly. So don't sleep through it.
Exactly. They can feel the fire alarm. And then also the exterior of the complex is going to be improved so they can go out and enjoy the gardens now. There'll be walkways and benches added and land that's not being currently put to good use.
Yeah. From the curb, it's going to look like a different property as well. We have extensive landscaping remodel and renovations in mind. We're putting in some walkways with some seating, a little gazebo out back with a seating area, some walkways, native drought-tolerant plantings. It's just going to be a much more appealing. And then the building itself is going to get renovated. The exterior is going to get refinished, some new colors, some have a little bit more pop to it.
And it's on a bus line. It's a transit-oriented apartment building and reinvestment in existing neighborhoods.
Yeah, it's a well-established neighborhood. It's a strong neighborhood. It's a great location with access to a variety of amenities. As you already mentioned, it's near the bus line. There's 2 major bus lines that run right through there with regular service. There's good access to shopping centers, retail stores.
And also there's a lot of public demand for this project, correct? The building's been operating at 100% capacity for years.
Yeah, it is. The 100% capacity with a wait list.
And is this part of the Housing Authority's overall plan for helping to meet public demand for affordable housing in our community by expanding into tax credits?
It is a component of it. Yep. So we're going to be doing that. We're going to be working on our own housing stock. That's really going to be, hopefully, our next move is to be renovating a lot of our own and then hopefully in the process of renovating our own, find some spaces where we can expand the housing on our existing sites. And then beyond that, we want to look at other opportunities, looking for places where we can build new housing as well.
And Matthew, do we have a waiting list for public housing admissions?
We do. And so there is a need out there. And I was going to mention that currently we're working on the energy performance contract for all our properties, which is also another mechanism, and you can explain the funding better than I can, but that's going to enable our properties to be more energy efficient once we're done with that project and all our developments. It benefits not only the community, but the residents are living in the units, because it's going to, here again, when you look at a housing stock that was built in the 70s, early 80s, they didn't use insulation as much. They didn't seal the envelope because it didn't really matter back then when it came down to being conservative and conserving our resources.
Utilities were a lot cheaper back then.
Utilities were a lot cheaper back then. And so, we're looking at really closing up that envelope so that the utilities are more affordable for the tenants. Just because they're in an older apartment or house doesn't mean that their utilities should be blowing out the window. So this is kind of an exciting thing going with this energy performance contract, and it's going to be done on all our properties. And I think that we're going to see the benefit directly, not only to the carbon footprint that we put on the city of Albuquerque or on this earth, so to speak, but to the tenants, because they're going to benefit from that directly from their utility payments.
It'll be warmer in the winter, cooler in the summer. You don't have to run the air conditioning all day long.
Absolutely. And that's what we, here again, when you look back at when our stock was built, that thought really didn't come in back then. When you look at double pane windows, maybe the mid-'70s, early '70s, double pane windows started coming in, but they weren't the way they are now. So when you look at the envelope, there's a lot of things that are done now, that weatherization, that can really help on that.
And weatherization and energy improvement jobs, these are all things that are going to be done locally. These aren't things you can outsource overseas. This creates employment locally, right?
Yeah, all the subcontractors are local, and actually we're working with, right now we're working with a local contractor.
And this helps us achieve the second part of the Housing Authority's mission. It's affordable housing and self-sufficiency opportunities. So we would love it if some of our residents got jobs working on these projects, right?
Yeah, and one thing we're working on too is what's called Section 3 hiring. Section 3 basically is an incentive from HUD telling us that we need to have a preference for contractors and vendors that are going to employ residents of our properties. So we're working on getting a better established process for that. So when we have a contractor that comes in, we can have a list of potentially of our residents that have skills that are looking for employment, where we can say, oh, here contractor, here's a list of people that might be able to do some of these work, some of the work for you.
People in landscaping, people in painting, maybe some people, if we have people in skilled construction trades. So we want to connect our residents with opportunity.
Right. And that's part of the Housing Authority growing and going, so to speak, because we're trying to grow not only what we put out, on the dirt in terms of our properties, but to grow our tenants and our residents so that they can go to the next level, which could potentially be home ownership for a lot of them. And so the more opportunities we can get to give to our tenants, the better off it is for the city of Albuquerque.
And speaking of tenants, Matthew, so our public housing program has 953 units, and are tenants always moving in and moving out of the units?
Yeah, and the nice thing is they're either graduating to a different program, or we've had some that have gone into home ownership. So we do have quite a cycle of that. And we've tried to do a number of improvements around that in terms of when we get our apartments and houses ready. We've really raised the standard on some of the things we put into the units and how we prepare it. So that when they go in, we have this theory that we talk about around the office is, would my mom want to live there? And so when we talk to the maintenance technicians and we talk to any contractors we use, we want this to be finished like your mother would be living there. So that's kind of a thing that we've been doing and going. And I had an opportunity to move in a family a couple weeks ago into an apartment over on 60th Street. And they were so grateful. And they walked in and they were so surprised at how well it was prepared and it was ready. It was cleaned, it was painted, the floors were waxed. It looked really nice. And I like seeing the smile on their faces when they move into something that, a lot of people have this thing, they think public housing, it's not what people think. We're raising the standards. We're going to be just like every other apartment or house in the market, in the rental market. We want to make sure that they're moving into something that is nice and that their mother would want to live into.
we aspire to have high-quality units.
Exactly. That's absolutely right.
And in fact, at least one of our maintenance technicians lives in public housing, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So he's helping to maintain the system that he lives in as a resident.
Exactly, exactly. So, and that's what we want to do. That's our goal, is quality housing. It's another one of our goals through the agency, is make sure we have quality housing out there.
And so what are some of the major differences between low-income housing tax credit program, public housing program, and Section 8, in case people don't understand the differences?
You can talk about development, I can talk about the qualifying. Which you want to talk about? You want to talk about qualifying first?
Go ahead, yeah.
In terms of qualifying, there really is no difference. They're all income-based. The difference between the tax credit properties, there's no subsidy. It's basically for operating for the tenants moving in. It's a mechanism for an owner developer to come in and to rehab an existing property or to build new construction. But there is no subsidy on there. The rents are restricted, as well as the income to live in is restricted. So when you look at a place like Rio Vista that already has a project-based Section 8, they all qualify. The only thing that may be added to their qualifications is maybe 2 or 3 extra pages or papers that they have to sign. Project-based Section 8 is subsidized. That's an individual contract with the owner. Public housing is not necessarily subsidized, but ours is with HUD. And so the qualifications are all going to be the same. They all need to, the income qualify. Their rent is 30% of their adjusted income in public housing and in a project-based Section 8 development. And tax credit, your rent is actually restricted to a different nature.
So it's kind of like it's on sale. In a tax credit apartment complex, it's privately owned. They're not getting a big operating subsidy, so the rents are lower, but they're not going to be as low as they might be in public housing.
Correct. The developer is getting a tax credit from the IRS, and for that tax credit, they're going in either rehabbing or building new construction, and their guarantee to the IRS is they're going to maintain affordability on that property. So we're going to move in people either in the 60th percentile or below the 60th percentile of the median income. So that's where the income restriction comes in. So not everybody may qualify to live in a tax credit property. The nice thing is if you have an existing public housing, or not public housing or project-based Section 8, they're going to qualify to live in that tax credit property. So not everybody may qualify for tax credits, not everybody may qualify for the subsidy on the other properties. And that's a nice thing, is it's really for the working person out there in the city of Albuquerque.
And Dan, you were going to mention a little bit more about the differences between tax credit housing, and public housing, and Section 8 housing?
Yeah, so, well, I think we can even divide Section 8 into 2 different things. Is the Rio Vista Apartments has a project-based Section 8 contract. That's a contract that stays with the property.
So the subsidy follows the building, not the people.
Correct. A tenant that moves into one of the units in that building will receive the rental assistance subsidy. When they move out, it doesn't move with them. There's also the Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program, which is also administered by the Albuquerque Housing Authority. It's a completely separate program
we have
from
4,000.
the public housing. But yeah, we have approximately 4,000 Housing Choice Vouchers that we administer. The Housing Choice Voucher travels with the individual, with the tenant or the household. So they can take that voucher and they go rent from any private landlord of their choosing. And they receive the rental assistance through the Albuquerque Housing Authority. Yeah.
And the tax credit properties love the voucher. So we have a number of voucher holders that are at the tax credit properties. So it really is helping each other when we have the voucher holder going into a tax credit property. Because it now gives them an ability to move into a new property or a substantially rehab property, which is nice.
Yeah, the tax credit program restricts rents, and it has the income qualifying for the tenant, so those units can't be rented to higher income individuals or households. But it doesn't prohibit the use of any other rental assistance subsidy. In fact, it's encouraged, both the project-based or the housing choice vouchers. Those people can move into the low-income housing tax credit properties.
And has the Albuquerque Housing Authority won some awards for increasing quality over the years?
We have, and I think, Dan, you know more about that than I do. But I think recently we won a couple of NARO awards.
And NARO is the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment Officials, correct?
Correct.
And they have a chapter here in New Mexico?
Yes, yes.
And Dan, you'd mentioned our Section 8 rental assistance program. Don't we also have a Veterans Affairs supportive housing program in that same line of rental assistance vouchers?
Yeah, it's a similar. It's a carve out. It's called the VASH, Veterans.
Veterans Affairs supportive housing?
Yeah, exactly. And it's just another form of the Section 8 voucher. And we rolled out a new program where we're administering these VASH vouchers to individuals. And it was a pretty new program for the area, pretty innovative, and it was very successful.
And so we got an award from the NARO New Mexico chapter for our excellence in reducing homelessness among U.S. military veterans.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's the Housing Choice Voucher Department is the one who administers that, and they're doing a great job. I don't remember the specialists who are in that, but they're doing a great job in making sure that a lot of the veterans that are either homeless or near homeless are getting into apartments. And that's a whole benefit of that. In fact, I want to say that in the mayor's address to the city, the State of the City address, he mentioned that program and how successful that is. So, that's another department within the Albuquerque Housing Authority that's successful and that's really bringing it, to the forefront, actually state and probably nationally. I think we won a national award for the VASH program also.
Yeah,
so.
One of our goals as a city is to eliminate chronic long-term homelessness among U.S. military veterans in our city. And the success of the VASH program is helping us reach that goal.
Absolutely.
And then also our housing authority is governed by the Board of Housing Commissioners. And who is our board chairman?
Stephen Vogel.
And he's recently won an award from NARO as well as being the top housing authority commissioner for the whole state of New Mexico. And it was a competitive process among all 33 housing authorities in the state. And we were recognized as being the top housing commissioner. And he said it was because of all the staff that he works under.
And when he said that, I didn't want him to lose sight of the fact that they provide the guidance. The Board of Commissioners sets policy and provides guidance. And so they're a very important cog in what we do. They're kind of our one eyes and ears from the community, but the other thing is they're giving us the lead and the guidance that we need. So, we have a really good Board of Commissioners right now, and it's a testament to what they've done at the Housing Authority in the last couple of years.
It's a really exciting time to be at the authority. I've been there. I'm a pretty new guy there. I've been there just about a year now. So, but it's, I jumped on board. I saw the exciting changes that were happening. I met the Board of Commissioners and was really excited about having this group of individuals provide us oversight and guidance. I think they're a terrific group. They have a great knowledge base, great ideas, and very well grounded. And they have the right balance between providing leadership direction and giving us the tools we need to go out and do what needs to be done, and giving us the room to go out and administer their vision accordingly. Another thing that I think we got an award from NARO for was for our strategic planning, and I think that was a pretty neat award. And having been through the process now of this strategic planning process, it's a great process, and to see all levels of the organization sort of looking in the same direction. There's not leadership saying we want to go this direction and staff saying we want to go over here. It's everybody's looking towards the same thing, and everybody wants to improve the processes, and bottom line is provide quality services, quality housing.
And if the public wants to offer input on our strategic plan for the next 3 years, they could contact the Housing Authority through our Facebook page or send us a letter. We're always interested in hearing what the public has to say about their public housing program, their Section 8 rental assistance program, and now their low-income housing tax credit program here in Albuquerque.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
the meetings of the Board of Housing Commissioners are also open to the public. They meet at our office on the third Wednesday of the month at 12 noon, and they have a public comment session at all those meetings. And also we have a Twitter account where we announce these things as well. So we want people to come to our events, let us know how we're doing, give us ideas about what they'd like for us to do in their neighborhood to help make it a better place to live.
Right. And our website, we probably haven't mentioned it yet, but it's abqha.org, as well as our, I don't remember the address for our Facebook page, but I imagine if you go and put Albuquerque Housing Authority, you can get it. But that's important and that's critical, and we want to receive feedback. We want to get to the point to where we're in neighborhoods and you don't know the difference between our apartments and any other apartments. And the feedback really does help us. People sometimes think that, oh, they're not going to do anything, but we do. But we have a process in which we plan. But going back to the strategic plan, that really it was encouraging to see that we're all on the same page, just in different layers of that page or different sections of that page. And it really was coming from all staff. It was where the rubber hits the road. It was the employees that are dealing with the tenants on a day-to-day basis. And it was encouraging to see all of us come together and say, hey, this is what we want to do for the city of Albuquerque.
And thank you for joining us on this episode of Albuquerque Housing Authority Update. It'll also be listed on YouTube if you'd like to watch it. Thank you.